What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about NIO. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else that you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So starting off with data, we have a lot of big things coming out this evening, such as GDP, industrial production, retail sales, unemployment. So a lot of big data that could easily move Chinese stocks higher. Over and above that, this is something that I've brought up like 2 weeks ago, but there is a meeting that's going to be taking place at the 20th to the 22nd. So in that meeting, they will be talking about a lot of things, monetary policy, stimulus, and kind of have a roadmap for the next several years. So in reality, if they do come to some conclusion over stimulus, that is instantly going to really hype up stocks. So we do have two big things coming out this week that could easily move Chinese stocks higher. Over and above that, one thing that has been really looming over the broader market and kind of putting us in the fear category, so meaning people's appetite for risk not necessarily on the table, has been the back and forth between China and the States. But there was a very productive conversation that did take place on the 18th between Besant and the vice premier of, I guess, representative of China. And so essentially the market's going to see this as positive, as kind of a good temporary patch. Even though Trump doesn't meet with China up until I think it's the last week of October, the market's going to take this as a temporary win. So at the end of the day, a lot of big data as well as this could really move things higher. And then over and above all of that, we have a lot of big companies unveiling their earnings, such as Netflix, Tesla, IBM, Intel, and so forth. So depending on what they give for future guidance and how their key metrics come out, you could see the markets really move higher. Of course, Netflix doesn't directly affect NIO, but indirectly it does through algorithmic trading. And I feel like algos have been really picking up a lot more lately with NIO. So this is, again, something to really pay attention to because it will move NIO. Associated to NIO, there really hasn't been all that much. The only thing that has come out since my last video on Friday was this. So it looks like ONVO has completed the delivery of 100,000 vehicles, and that's a huge milestone. So I think ONVO is kicking ass, taking names, and yeah, so at the end of the day, this is pretty good stuff. As far as if this is a good catalyst to buy NIO, I'd say not so much, only because we generally knew that they were going to hit that. Like L90 has been like on point the last couple months, and then L60 prior to that. So I think at the end of the day, this is a good FYI and a good kind of reconfirmation of what NIO is doing, but it's not really a good crazy catalyst. So in my opinion, what is really going to move NIO is registration numbers as well as kind of data points and companies unveiling the earnings. And when it comes down to the registration numbers, this is going to be the first week since their holiday. I think that in my last video or last time I brought up the registration numbers, I guess that amount only did include 2 days. So my apologies on that. But this upcoming registration number on Tuesday, that will be for one full entire week. So hopefully we'll be able to see kind of double digit, so 10,000 or greater. And if so, then the market is going to really take that as a very strong positive. And in my opinion, I don't see any reason why NIO can't hit that. Going into this upcoming week though, 12.1% of the free float's being shorted, works out to be 167.4 million shares overall being shorted. So shorts, they did increase about 400,000 shares on Friday. They've been kind of all over the place in all honesty. Like they have kind of increased and they return, they increase, they return. So there's no real rhyme or reason. I think they're just largely taking advantage of the broader market's fear. Plus, they are strategically hitting NIO hard at key levels. And what I mean by that is the technicals. So of course, NIO had a lot of good opportunities. So most recently it did hit a 52-week high of 802, but it really had, and it did struggle with this R1. So 783, that's going to be a very key point in the short term that it needs to get over. But right now, this $7 range is going to be something that you really want to watch for NIO to get over this week. So because NIO right now, for various reasons, like it always gets hit. Luckily enough though, the last couple trading days, it does get bought up throughout the trading day. So even though pre-markets are rather volatile, it looks like big institutions and algos at the same time do see some sort of value with NIO. So most likely it does truly want to touch this $7 range. But the $1 million question is it going to be able to get above that? And in my opinion, based on everything that I mentioned, such as the whole optimism for this, so between China and the States, good companies unveiling the earnings, as well as key data, that could be enough to really get it above that $7 range. And then most likely for the rest of this week, it'll trade between this R1 and the pivot. Depending on registration numbers, you could see that 783 also being hit. Both right here are very key resistance levels. So just kind of watch for that. Flip side, 617 and then 565 is going to be support levels. I realistically don't see these being hit this week unless something crazy does happen, but nothing is kind of on the table for that to happen. It'd have to be spontaneous or something along those lines. But looking at the options, you do see a consensus from a bull standpoint for it to be between that 7 to 750, bears for it to be sub kind of 650. So there's definitely a lot more upside than down with the open interest. There's not any crazy walls this upcoming week. You have around 19,000 at that 8, 14,000 at the 750, and then 14,000 at that 7. So nothing too crazy if you ask me. But like I said, if let's say NIO does get close to that 7 or 783, you might see shorts try to manipulate it down as per usual. So you might see a little bit more activity coming from them. Aside from all of that fun stuff on the actual chart, luckily enough, it was able to close above that 50-day moving average on Friday. So right now it's just wedge bound between that 10 and 50-day moving averages. So best case scenario, we do get above this, and that way we'll have more positive momentum to really push it higher. But looking at the market position, you see some strong willing buyers up until about 669 for the most part, and then there's kind of just tapers off a little bit. Next strong kind of support right here is around 616. Aside from that though, you do have, it's kind of sporadic all over the place, but a little bit more willing sellers. And again, I think that is because of the broader market's fear lately, but once we go into this upcoming week, that might kind of disappear. So again, I think that might be a pretty strong positive. Aside from all of that fun stuff though, nothing really crazy for news or articles. I guess in theory, possibly Tesla's earnings, which is coming out, I think it is on the Wednesday, that could also move NIO potentially, depending on what they talk about in regards to China. But in my opinion, I think it's going to be kind of the points that I did mention. And there hasn't really been all that much in analyst ratings. So I think analysts are now just going to be waiting for NIO's earnings, which have not been announced yet, but it should be, I believe it's always like the second week of November, if I remember correctly. But nonetheless, there's a lot of good reasons to be fairly optimistic going into this upcoming week for NIO. So let me know your thoughts on NIO. Where do you see things going? Are you going to be buying more? Are you going to be selling? What's your kind of general thoughts on NIO? Hopefully everyone's having an amazing weekend. And then one final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. Put out daily day trades, numerous swing trades. Worthwhile to pop over there and check that out. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.